Greetings, everybody. I didn't think I was going to make it tonight. I got distracted. And as a result of that, I didn't do my preparation ahead of time. How's everybody doing? Can you hear me? Let's have a thumbs up from somebody to say you've got me loud and clear. Hey, Michelle, Gilles, and Patrick, early birds. Question. Yeah, I need to know what caused this rash of questions in the last 24 hours about the 4X Amscope objective. This one. I've had 4 questions in 12 hours about this. So that's what I'm talking about tonight. Here, I'll show you. That's what we're talking about tonight. Kind of dark looking, isn't it? I'll try to fix that. Anyway, let me see. So yes, Gilles, I'm going to answer your question as part of what I'm going to be talking about. Don't look at my stove in the background. I've changed the angle of my computer, and you're not supposed to see the dirty stovetop. Hey Bruce, how's it going? Hot, dry day down there, middle of summer for you, isn't it? Good grief. Hey Amy, Phil. Right, Borderland Peppers, 4 in a row. You get a prize for that, I think. How's it going? All right, let me see. I'm going to tell you what. Hey Jan, how are you doing? How's Michigan? I guess you're in winter up there too. I understand it's snowing in the Midwest. Yuck. Don't like the sound of that. Well, ask Andrew. He'll know. He's from down there. My goodness, we got a lot of folks here today. That's fantastic. Hey, Toluca, Harold, Allan. Wonderful to see everybody. And Susan, I just noticed. And Joseph. Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad you're hearing me loud and clear. Laura, how are you doing? Excellent. Fantastic. Okay, listen, we've got a lot to cover today, and we're going to start talking about a couple of questions that I got about microscopes, microscope objectives. We have kind of gotten ahead of ourselves over the course of the last year. We've talked about a lot of very esoteric stuff. And I think several people who were in the process of transitioning to using microscope lenses may have got a little bit left behind. So what I want to do is pause and give you a quick basic set of instructions for this particular objective. And I'm going to tell you a few of the other things that I think you will be glad to have. If you're new to this is for you. Now, if you're not new to this, if you're an old hand at this, then feel free to answer the questions as they come up and contribute by all means. And any that I agree with, I'll read out. So yeah, we want to help as many people as we can during this hour. I know that sometimes we just kind of natter, but that's okay too. All right. So here's the deal. This is a wonderful place to start if you're thinking about getting into using microscope optics instead of camera lenses because you want to get a bit more reach. As a general rule, you think of magnification up to about 1:1 as being the realm of the macro lens. These days there are some macro lenses that will get you to 2:1. And we talked about those recently, but for the sake of this discussion, we'll say somewhere around life size is what you can expect from your macro lens. Then you have lenses like this one. This is an enlarger lens by Nikkor, which when it's reversed onto some kind of extension becomes a really stellar performing macro lens, up to about 3.5:1. But if you want to get much above that and get consistent images, you're going to need to start thinking about using microscope objectives. And most of us get into that in a very inexpensive and safe way. And there is no more inexpensive or safe way than by scoring one of these bad boys. This is a lens made by Anscope. It's branded under every cheap microscope brand in the world has these. There is a difference between some of them though, and you definitely want to get the one that has the knurling at the back of the barrel like this. You also want to make sure that all of your printing is on the bottom of the barrel and that the end of the barrel comes off. These are the characteristics of this particular lens that make it a complete standout. The worst mistake that you could make is to assume that every finite objective, finite meaning it's not conjugate ad infinity, it doesn't give you the ability to put other optics in the optical path like you can with an infinity corrected objective. This is just a magnifying lens, just that we're going to put on the front of the camera with some extension. But you cannot think that all finite objectives are as good as this. This is an absolute aberration in the world of microscope optics. When this thing first came out, when I bought my first one, it was under $20. I think it was $18 or thereabouts. Same one. I've had two of them, but I gave one of them away. Under $20. You can't get lunch for that these days. So how do you set this up and how do you use it? Well, it's also a great place to talk about the setup for finite objectives. Now, if you look at the barrel, which you probably can't see from back there, it says plan 4/.10, which is the numeric aperture, and then it has the number 160, and then another /0.17. The 0.17 is the recommended thickness of the cover slip you're supposed to use if you're using this on a microscope. But there's a more important piece of information on here, and that is the 160, because that is telling you where this lens will form an image when light comes through it. And it'll form an image with a tube length of 160 millimeters. Now that is on a microscope. And if you think about it, the microscope is going to consist of a couple of tubes that you look down, and up at the top of the tubes where you put your eyes are some magnifying eyepieces. Now, in order for you to be able to see through this objective at the other end of those tubes, the image is going to actually form right in front of your eyepiece, not in front of your eye. So we have to take off the 10 millimeters that allows for the length of the eyepiece. And that leaves us with a distance at which this will form an image of 150 millimeters. Now, this is typical of many of the finite objectives, but not all of them. Some of them will have 180, I believe, is Olympus. Well, there are different companies have different tube lengths. And a lot of them aren't using finite optics at all anymore. Let me put you back over here. So how do we set this thing up so that the objective is 150 millimeters away from our sensor? Well, to do that, we need a ruler, which I did not bring. There are two ways that you can do it. We're going to pretend that this is a camera right here. It is a camera right here, but I'm not going to take it apart because I'm going to use it for something else. We have a sensor in our camera, whether it's a mirrorless camera or a DSLR like this, and there will be a mark somewhere on your camera that depicts where that sensor plane is. That is the beginning of your measurement, and the last piece of glass, or the first piece of glass you see looking into the objective, is the end of your measurement. So between here and here, you need 150 millimeters. Now, there are several ways that you can get that. You could take a lens like this one and take a hammer and smash all the glass out of it. I wouldn't recommend that. We're not going to do that. Or you could take some extension tubes. Any number of different extension tubes. It doesn't really make any difference. Remember, there's nothing electrical in this. It doesn't have an aperture to change. There's nothing that you can control with the camera in this. So just empty tubes. Not completely empty though. Lest I forget, when you're setting this up, the name of this doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's flocking material. You need to flock the inside of all of these tubes if you're using tubes. Now, a lot of you who've been around know that I use tubes when I can't get around it, but I would much rather use bellows. Bellows are infinitely more versatile because you can change the distance in a twinkling, and that's actually what I do. Now, a lot of people will then go into a tailspin over the adapters that you need. And one of the questions I was asked this morning was, what adapter do I need to use my Sony E-mount bellows with one of these objectives? Well, it doesn't matter what you're mounting it to. You only need one adapter. And it has, I didn't prepare for this, and I could still put my hands on the correct adapter in 10 seconds. This is an RMS, Royal Microscope Society. It's a measurement of the threads on the old-fashioned finite microscope objectives. This screws right into here. You can get these at WeMacro, at RAF Camera, on eBay, on Amazon, anywhere basically. That screws in like so, and then there's another piece to the adapter which is just an F mount in my case, but in the case of the gentleman who asked me this morning, it would be an E mount. You would screw on an E mount bayonet to this, and then this goes onto your bellows like so. And then all you have to do is with your ruler, that's what I like to do. I don't go by the guides here because then you have to calculate your flange focal distance and stuff like that. I just take a ruler and put one end, the 0, on the marker for the sensor, and then at 150 millimeters, the back end of the knurling, where the knurling stops is where the glass starts. When that's 150, tighten your bellows down and start taking pictures. That is how difficult it is. The only way that you can focus, obviously, that you can move your focal plane is by moving either the whole assembly with the camera back and forth on a rail, or you can actually do it just moving the back standard backwards and forwards. But we're not going to get into that right now. You would begin by just moving the whole thing. And that's it. That's all there is to it. That is how you can get into microscope lens photography for $18 or $20, whatever it is now, plus an adapter which costs $4 or $5 that you can get at any of the online shops. And that's it. It's terribly simple, and it takes unbelievably good pictures, really sharp. A little bit of chromatic aberration in there, but these things aren't corrected like the expensive Mitutoyos and the fancy objectives, and we're not talking about any of that tonight. That's all we're talking about is how you set this thing up. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to pause for just a second to get my breath while you see if there's any questions, and I'm going to go back and see if I've missed any questions. Boy, there's a lot of activity tonight. It's wonderful. All right, here's a question. Photographer 85, great stuff. Thanks for liking it. Yep, I appreciate that. Oh, Blair, you've got a 4X, but you haven't unpacked it. Okay, all right. Well, you will enjoy this lens. It is an eye-opener if you've never shot with a microscope objective. The reason this is so good is it's really very bright. It lets lots of light through at 150 millimeters, and you'll find it a lot easier to work with than you might think. And you don't have to deal with a relay lens or a second lens, and it's cheap, cheap, cheap. The bellows cost $200 though. If you don't want to use bellows, you can use the cheapest 42 millimeter extension tubes you can find. If you buy, I'm showing you the wrong thing, sorry. If you buy the cheapest extension tubes that you can find, like these ones, you can buy them at We Macro, and in order to make it worth your while buying the tubes, they also sell a lovely little adapter. This is for a different objective, but they have this for the RMS too, and it just screws right into the end of your tubes like that. Could not be easier. So you just go from your camera, bayonet mount, to your camera, the length of the tubes, and then the objective, and you're all set. That's it. Let me talk for just a minute about adapters, because that is the other thing that comes up. For the longest time, I didn't get any other emails except emails about, please explain to me what adapter I need. So I've done loads of videos on adapters, but I'm gonna break it down for you into the way that I think about it, so that if you think about it this way, you'll find you probably don't need anybody's help. Let me explain what I mean by that. You know, because you watched the video, that in this particular setup, all we had was we put a microscope objective on the end of some tubes. That's all I know, but I can work my way into figuring out what adapter I need. So, well, the tubes have to fit onto my camera, but my camera only takes camera lenses. You know, camera lenses that look like something like that on the end. So there has to be some kind of an adapter that will take the screw on this 42 millimeter extension tube and allow it to go on to a camera. Well, that's it. Now, if you write this down, every adapter that you use is going to have several features that you need to be aware of. It's going to have an end that's near the camera and an end that's near the lens. And depending on whether or not the end that you're dealing with accepts something, screws into it, or if it screws into something else, will determine how you describe that adapter. So let's say you know that you have this and it's screwed into your camera adapter and it's attached to your camera. So on this end, you've got what's called a female end, in that something has to screw into here so that you can put the objective on. The objective, however, is quite small. Sound of unscrewing. Notice I'm not rising to the bait on any of this innuendo, but this isn't going to fit. Well, it will fit, actually. You could fit 3 of them in there. So we have to somehow get, and this is what I'm trying to teach you here, is the nomenclature, getting that right. We have to fit an RMS. We know it's RMS because it said so on the box when you bought the thing. An RMS male thread to a 42 millimeter, which we call an M42 as the shorthand for that. M42 female. Now, imagine what that coupler would look like. It would look like, it would be something that this would screw into. So the adapter, whatever it looks like, has got a hole with threads inside it that this will go into. So by definition, we know that that has to be an RMS female. So we need an adapter that's an RMS female. And where does the other end go? Well, I forgot which way were we doing it. We were doing it this way around. So whatever the adapter looks like has to go into this female thread. So it must be a male M42. So you have just described the adapter in the way that the adapter shops describe it. There's no other way to describe it. What you need is an M42 male to an RMS female adapter. And that's exactly what you have just figured out. And it's the same for any and every adapter that you need. You just figure out, what am I attaching to what? Does it need to, what is the thread size? And does it need to be a male or a female? And if you go through it systematically, you won't get confused, and you'll be able to go to RAF Camera is the best source for weird adapters in the whole world. And they will give you by M numbers every. I'll show you because I was on there this morning. Let me get to it first. I wonder if I can do this without losing my view of YouTube. I think so. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you. I don't think it's going to do it, is it? No. I don't know why that is. Bummer. Device not connected. Well, it is. RAF Camera. If you go to RAF Camera, well, you're all at computers right now. If you go to it and click on their main page, you'll see that they have a banner at the top, and one of the headings is adapters, and it has adapters by M number. So you just pick out either one, be it the front or the back of the adapter you're looking for, and if you use the naming convention I just told you, you'll find your adapter. Whatever it is, you'll find it. And they have everything that you could imagine. Okay, so let me, I'm not going to try to figure out why my screen won't do right. I just figured it out already. It's because I changed the cable. All right, let me see. There was a question. Hey Art, how's it going? Oh, Michael Katori from Queensland. Excellent. Nice to have you with us. And it's warm in Detroit. Is Detroit near Cleveland? I should look that up. I'm going to be photographing and videoing the making of an album in Cleveland. No, in Boston. Sorry, it's not Cleveland, it's Boston. That'll be fun. That'll be in the springtime. So we've got a question from Photographer85. The Amscope 4X is not infinity corrected. That is correct. It is a finite objective, meaning it functions at a finite distance from the sensor, 150 millimeters, or if you're on a microscope, 160 millimeters. But for us photographers, 150. Does that mean the image circle is bigger than with an infinity corrected lens? No. The infinity corrected lens works differently, but the end result is the same. In the infinity corrected optics, well, in the finite objective, the rays of light leaving the objective are being focused, they have been focused by the lens onto your sensor. End of story. That is not what happens with one of these. With one of these, the light leaves the back of the objective in a parallel flux. The light rays are a beam of parallel rays. The reason for that is you can have a distance between the objective and your relay lens, or the tube lens as it's also known. into which you can put other stuff, like a beam splitter if you want to have part of the image go somewhere else. There's all kinds of things that you can put in there, special lighting techniques, all manner of things. And that's the difference, is that you have that extra space. It also gives you lots of flexibility about how you set it up. But once the light in its parallel flux hits the relay lens does exactly what this does, and it focuses the light right in front of your sensor. Same difference. So it's like an extra level. Just there are byproducts of having that technology, and part of it is it can give you a much longer working distance, which is huge. This does not have a long working distance, just a few millimeters. But that's why you take the front barrel off, by the way, is to let more light in. The other thing I was going to talk about, and I'll try to talk about it as I go, is somebody asked me, rather a nebulous question, what microscope do I recommend? And of course, that is a loaded question. Could take me the rest of the year to answer that. But no, we'll go with the short version tonight. It depends what you want it for. What you plan on doing with it, that is, and how serious you are about being a microscopist. Do you want to take pictures through it? Do you want to record video through it? Do you just want to look through it? Are you buying a microscope so that you can prepare insects, for example, or seeds, or some other small thing to take pictures of it on a separate rig? Or are you buying a microscope so that you can take pictures of diatoms in seawater? So the way you answer each of these questions determines what you need to be looking at. This is going to be a terrible oversimplification for anybody who's into microscopy. Just bear with me. It will make more sense, I think, to people who are brand new. A microscope is something you look in to see an enlarged version of whatever your subject is. And there are two general categories that we think of in true microscopes. I'm not talking about the electronic gizmos that just electronically enlarge the picture. I'm talking about optical microscopes. One is the kind that you look through and can work through. That would be a dissecting microscope or a binocular dissecting microscope. A stereo microscope, you may have heard it. It usually consists of a body with two eye pieces coming out of it and some kind of a gantry that holds it up off your table, and you put your specimens under there and work on them. If I could share my screen, I would show you some pictures of different microscopes, but you've seen my microscope. That is a dissecting scope. It also has an adapter on it that allows me to take pictures through it, but it's a kind of an old-fashioned version of that. So that would be the kind of microscope that you would want if you were using it as a tool in macro photography, or for that matter, a tool in electronics, or anything where you need to have really good enlargement and a good clear picture. The beauty of the stereo microscope is most of the lighting is reflected, so the light shines onto your subject and bounces up into the scope, and the optics can be very, very clear and very beautiful, actually. Even cheap, junky microscopes from big box retailers that you can buy for $100, even that will blow your mind the first time you look through it at something little, because you'll see detail that you didn't know existed, except from pictures. And it's a crucial part of my microscopy, I mean my photography. I could not do without a microscope. I would have to stop taking pictures because I could never prepare them for photography without it. I will spend, as you know, because you've spent it with me, hours in the summertime going through the catch from my net under the microscope and picking out the best specimens and getting them ready and getting them pinned and what have you. So that's one way that you would use a microscope. And if you're going to buy one of those, I would first of all say, by all means, get a cheap locally made or Chinese made Amscope stereo microscope for $100 or $200. They have no bells and no whistles. They'll give you somewhere between 10 and 40 magnification, which is more than you'll ever need. They don't have a very big field of view. The optics aren't very good. They distort things a little bit. But as a working tool, I had the same Amscope microscope for donkey's years because I couldn't afford anything else. And it worked great. And I loved it. I've given it to somebody else to use because I have a better microscope now. The difference between a cheap stereo dissecting microscope and a good one is all in the optics. Well, they're built more sturdily, they're going to last a lifetime, but it's the picture, the clarity and the detail and the resolution of the eyepieces and the objective lens in it are unbelievable. I have a Leica, which is one of the nicest microscopes there is, and it's ancient too, but it's absolutely beautiful. The second kind of microscope is usually for higher magnification photography. It's when you want to look at things like individual cells or even parts of a cell. It's where you want to get far more detail and you're more into the microstructure of things than you are the macro structure of them, or the outward appearance. You're looking usually at parts of an insect or parts of a structure, not the whole thing. And to that end, these scopes tend to be bulkier. They're usually quite large, and they have some kind of a light focusing system underneath the microscope. Now, some of them are upside down. Don't worry about that. They have light shining up through the subject. It's transmissive light. It's different than the reflected light. So when you look through one of these compound microscopes, and of course there are many, many different kinds, you're looking basically through whatever it is you're looking at high magnification. And that makes it much more difficult to do. It makes it much harder to know what you're looking at. And as photographers, you'll find that usually with a compound scope, what you're doing is you are documenting what you see through the scope. You're not taking photographs through the scope in the same way we take photographs on our macro rig. That's a terrible oversimplification, because I know lots of people who take fantastic photographs just through the microscope. But I mean, it's just the general idea is that way. Now, the problems you have with a light microscope, a compound microscope, include the fact that there's very little working space. You generally are a millimeter or two on top of your subject, so there isn't a lot of place to get light in to take photographs. Remember, we're still going to be interested in taking reflected light photographs. Much harder to do. Also, microscopes usually come with the objectives attached, and they're often not the kind of quality objectives that we think of when we're buying them one at a time to take pictures through. A microscope that came equipped with 4 Mitutoyo objectives will probably be a fairly expensive treat. So generally speaking, when you buy a microscope of that type, a compound scope, you're buying, first of all, a good basic build that has good optics, but you're really buying the tube lens and the objectives, and that will determine a large part of the price. And the other thing will be, what can the microscope do? What other features does it have built in? Because there are kinds of microscopy that use a dark field, for example, where the light is excluded in certain directions so that you see things in a different way, kind of a silhouetted, high contrast images. So there are all kinds of different tricks that a microscope will have available in it, and every time you add some functionality, you add to the expense. It would be no trouble at all to spend $30,000 on a compound microscope that was a research grade microscope. And honestly, while I would say no problem going with a cheap dissecting scope for $100 from Amscope, I'd say that's perfectly fine. I would not say that for a compound scope. If you're going to buy a compound scope and you don't have the funds to buy a new one, in fact, even if you do have the funds to buy a new one, buy a used one. They're made to last forever. And if you get one that's been carefully taken care of, it'll last you forever. I am actually in the market for one myself right now, so I'm looking, and there are some bargains out there. But look for the good brands: Nikon, Olympus, Zeiss. There are many. One thing I might do is put together a little bit of a shopping guide for microscopes in case anybody else is interested. But I would get a used scope every day of the week, because you can get so much more for about 10%. Really, you can get about 5 to 10% of the new price of a microscope. You can find them used, because there is a big market for them. All right, I've got to stop talking. I'm not looking at the questions. The image circle is not necessarily bigger or smaller. It's actually dependent on other things, mostly the physical opening, the optics of the objective, not whether it's infinitely conjugated or not. Let me see. Fred Sloan is a new photographer, so everybody be nice to Fred. Fred, have you joined Discord? Discord is a place that you need to go. Bud, who's right below you on the chat, may be able to tell you how to get there. There'll be an invitation in the program notes for the video that goes with this live stream. But Discord is a place where all these cool photographers hang out, and they are the most helpful group of people you would ever want to meet. And if you're trying to figure out how to take a macro photograph, ask them, and they should be your first line of attack. Hey Bud, glad you made it, and I'm afraid I still have not looked at the picture that we're editing together in 1 week and 2 days. Don't forget that. Bud Parrott and I are doing a Photoshop and Lightroom for macro photography kind of tutorial thing, Q&A. We're going to edit pictures together. It'll be fun. Michelle Cox is wondering again. She's been warned about that, but she's wondering the Leica 25 at 5x, how would it do against the 5x objective? That's a very good question. It would depend who you asked. If you asked Robert O'Toole, he would tell you that the camera lens, the Leica, was better than the Mitutoyo, or that's what people will quote him saying. But that's not actually what he said. It was in one respect that it was better, that it had a big image circle, and it wasn't a problem with a full frame camera. But it probably is not going to get close to as sharp an image as the 5x Mitutoyo. But if you were comparing it to a finite objective that was along the lines of something like this, I would say that the Leica will probably do a very good job. You just have to try. It's not an apples to apples comparison. One is a camera lens that is being pushed way beyond where the camera lens should be. I mean, it's going to be well into diffraction territory just using it against an optic that is made to operate at 5 times magnification. So you be the judge. But I generally believe that, and I've said this before and I'll go on record saying it again, that with the exception of a reversed enlarger lens, which I think will comfortably get you to about 3.5 to 1, generally speaking, if I'm going to be shooting extreme macro photography greater than 1 to 1, I'm going to use the tool that was invented for that purpose, which is the microscope objective on what is basically a microscope with a camera on the end. Knurly, man, that's knurly. That is. Don't forget, they've got these that have the knurling at the end, and other places they're made by a different company, and they're not as good. In fact, they're nowhere near as good. All right, now Joseph is being argumentative, which is excellent. He does not think of 1 to 1 as macro. Fair enough. You have 4x5 cameras and a friend's 8x10. Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to argue with you, Joseph. I think that sounds perfectly reasonable. You can call macro whatever you want. We generally just use the term, and I'm talking to everybody else now. We use the term macro just as a way to describe that next step beyond close-up photography, because it takes slightly different lenses. That's why we call them macro lenses, or extension tubes, that type of thing. And then extreme macro is, again, I mean, I think of extreme macro as 20x, but really anything more than 1 is what most people talk about. And if you just want to be understood, then use what most people use, which is 1 to 1 for macro and greater than 1 to 1 for extreme macro. Not something worth arguing about, really. Chris, hi everyone, he says. Hi Chris, say we. Oh, you've been lurking for a while. Well, I'm glad you joined us. It's quite harmless, really. And see, people are nice to you, Chris. That Michelle had said welcome before I did. Good on you. Michelle, are you having a conversation with somebody? I think you are. Oh, yes, you are. ND Canon shooter. Got it. Sorry, I'll butt out. All right. Joseph's asking a photographer 85 if he's ever played around with a Zeiss Optifot or a Nikon Multifot. Yeah, that's what you're looking for. That's the kind of microscopes you're looking for on the used market. Don't look at those on the new market. It will be discouraging. Let me see. What else was I going to tell you about shopping for? There are lots of places that microscopes show up. If you live in a big city, looking for a lab equipment company that sells used lab equipment, a surplus store or a warehouse store, you can get some great bargains from there. But I think people these days are pretty wise on the value of some of these optical tools. My friend Jeff over at Light Glass Optics, he sells high-end microscopes, and they're expensive, but they are not a fraction of the cost of you could expect from a new one. And of course, when you get it from somebody like Jeff, you're getting a microscope that has been serviced and cared for by somebody trained to do that. As opposed to just getting it off Facebook or one of those other outlets. Though I would have no compunction at all about buying a microscope on eBay, providing it was documented well enough for me to see that the thing was in good shape, and if I could send it back if it wasn't. I wouldn't hesitate. Now, somebody who's going to disagree with me, who has a nice high-end Amscope microscope, is Bud. And yeah, Bud, I understand, is very happy with his dissecting scope. That is the opposite of what I'm talking about when I say an inexpensive scope. His is a real beauty, set up with the camera and everything. All right. Yeah. Okay. Fine, Joseph. That's good. We'll go with Walmsley's original definition. Sounds good. Excellent. Now, Borderland peppers can't wait for spring. But Borderland, I'm going to have to break the news to you. You do have to wait for spring. We all do. You could move to Alabama and your winter would only last about 23 minutes. I think winter was today. I can't be sure. It may get colder. But yeah, if you're back over there in Blighty or mainland Europe, yeah, you've got winter to go through first. So you have an XH2. What's an XH2? Chat amongst yourselves. Oh, the new Fuji. Wow, that's nice. The pepper business is picking up. Send me some seeds. I'll grow some of those things over here. That looks like a nice camera. It's is it full frame? I can't tell. No, it's APS-C. High resolution mirrorless crop sensor camera. Groundbreaking 40 megapixel BSI sensor. Fantastic. You got to send us a picture of that when you get it. Oh, you've already got it, Borderland? You know what? I think we've known each other long enough that you can tell me what your first name is, because calling you Borderland it seems rude to me. But you might have an odd first name, in which case I would understand. The audience just disappeared again like it did last week. You all just vanished and then all came back again. Amazing. How was it? How was the trip? All right. I'm going to do some homework on that camera because that's really boundary breaking. I wonder what the pixel density is at 40 megapixels on an APS-C sensor. Yowza. All right, for Europeans, it's also worthwhile to look for Ricoh. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they're very much like Leica scopes in that, you know, they just don't make them like they used to. Oh, they were acquired by Leica. Okay, well, there you go. Question coming up. Hey, Allan, can you find used microscopes at government auction sites? Yeah, you absolutely can. That was, when I said surplus, that's what I meant, was what I was thinking. The places that universities will decommission a bunch of them, and often they give them away. If you keep your nose to the what do you keep your nose to so that you know about? No, it's your ear. If you keep your ear to the rail, no, that doesn't sound safe either. There's a way you can find out about these things. Government auctions, I'm sure, are publicized. And you just have to swoop, because I know that when these things go on sale, a lot of people, resellers, will go in and buy the whole lot and refurbish them and sell them at a profit. But boy, if you know anybody, I think that Alison Pollock, one of our Patreon folks and somebody who talked to us just last month about slime molds, she got her microscope that way from a surplus arrangement. By the way, I almost forgot to say, you know that it's this Thursday that I am hosting Steve Axford And I've gathered questions from everybody who wanted to give them to me, and I've given them to him. We've made all our final arrangements for for Thursday's meeting, and looks like everything is going to go ahead. So it's going to be late in the day by the time I get it finished and get all the pictures together and everything. So the video will probably come out the next day for Patreon and the day after that on YouTube. So just letting you know. I'm so excited to talk to him. The guy is just about the most well-known, popular fungus photographer in the world. I'm sure he's going to be very interesting. Alrighty. Messy Laura, how are you? Long time no hear from. Let me see. The fastest autofocus and blah, blah, blah. There you go. Every good new camera has a lot of blah, blah, blah. I don't understand what it is either. Taluka. Oh, answering somebody else's question. Alrighty. People are chatting back and forth about what adapters to use, and that's great. That's great. I used to write the longest emails. I don't know if anybody from that era is still around and watching, but it would people would get in touch and say, "Hey, I've got this camera and I want to set up this lens. What kind of adapters do I need?" And I would spend hours writing those emails because they would be long and they'd have pictures in them and they'd describe every single little piece of equipment you needed, and it was a learning experience. But I think it was probably helpful for the people on the other end. But and that was long before I was behind on my emails like I am now. I can't even say hello because I'm 12,000 behind. You don't want to hear about that. I don't blame you. All right, let me see. Joseph's giving tips on photo optics. Well worth listening to. And Photographer 85, you were looking at the 63mm EL nickel, were you not? Did you get that? Was it the f2.8N? I wonder. That's a good, apparently a very good lens. A friend of mine uses it, and or used it, doesn't use it anymore. And we already talked about the kind of film it uses, didn't we? All right. Yes, the beard is a bit ridiculous, isn't it? My brothers said to me, I talk to my brothers every weekend. On Sunday we have a get together and compare notes, and my brothers are very understanding, and they all three agreed that it was time I got rid of this. It was starting to look ridiculous, so I'm not going to get rid of it now as it's getting a rise out of them. But thank you, I appreciate it, Messy Laura. It's I'm not the kind of person that can grow a beard overnight. It takes a lot of overnights, a lot of dedication. All right. Oh, you found a bellows, Fred Sloan, for $100 on eBay from China. You know, I would avoid it like the plague. I have yet to find a $100 bellows that was worth $100. But I can guarantee you that there's a $200 bellows that is worth twice that. Either the PB4 or the PB6 from Nikon are stupendous bellows. Canon makes a very good one. All the other good ones are crazy expensive. You know, if you get a in a box, and they are beautifully engineered. I've had this one for donkey's years, and it's just perfect. And it has so many nifty features on it. Watch my videos on it, because I made 3 videos on the bellows. it's worth waiting an extra however long you need to save up the extra $100. It really is. I wouldn't say that unless I really meant it. I wrote an article years ago. It's on my website. It's called, I can't remember, but if you search for PB6, P as in Peter, B as in brick, 6, then you'll see the article, and it's an article where I describe why this is the best purchase in macro photography, and I still believe that. Well, it's one of the best. It's one of the best, but it's beautiful. Couldn't go wrong. Oh, I just received $5 from Borderland Peppers. Yo, and his name's Josh, so don't let me forget that. Did I completely scare off? Oh, what's the gentleman's name with the funny spelling? I can't remember. I think I was rude to him last week, and he might not be back. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Borderland or Josh. That's much appreciated. By the way, I should have figured out beforehand how close I am to my goal. I can't remember. I'll tell you. I'll tell you next time. I know that last week was. I forgot to mention it. I think that was the problem, and I forgot to mention it this week. And it's 1 minute to go, so I don't think I'll get any donations. All right, yeah, the face carpet does take a lot of. I'm in there grooming it constantly, and I find things in it, like bits of dinner from last night. You shouldn't eat them though if they've been in your beard all night. That's disgusting. All right, Fred, you've been going through my videos over the last week. Well, good. I'm glad they're coming in handy. Well, you didn't say you liked them, but yeah. Keep watching. They'll grow on you. Peanut butter. That's it. PB6. Peanut butter. All right. 125 Toluca. A PB4. Yeah, you'll find the PB5s up to about 150, and then the PB6 is around 2. Guys, we're out of time. Oh, for crying out loud. Do kids follow who around at the mall? Oh, me, Santa. Yeah, no, I should this year, shouldn't I? Put on a red outfit and go scare children at the mall. I'll probably get arrested. Shouldn't do that. Art, you sent me a YouTube link without an explanation. Okay. The link is a link for setting a Mitutoyo lens setup. Okay. I know how to do that though, Art. I will. I'll read I'll look at the link and see if I can figure it out. All right. As someone with a foot-long beard, yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. I'll never catch up. The ends of mine just die and fall off before it could ever get to a foot. I'd like to see that beard though. You got to send a picture. All right. Best types of objective for putting on a camera: biological, mineral, dark field, bright field. Well, dark field, bright field is all the good ones. The other objectives that you might put on a camera are all specialty objectives for certain special types of microscopy. For doing fluorescence work or something, you're just looking for a bright field, and most of them are bright field and dark field. Like Mitutoyo, for example, makes the same optics in a bright field package as well as a bright field and dark field package, the BD plans. So get a good light microscopy objective, but there are so few of them that are affordable. If they don't have Mitutoyo in front of the name or CFI plan Nikon, you're probably not going to be able to afford it. The really good ones for photography are all expensive. Things like the Nikon Fluor objectives, which are thousands of dollars. we'll pick this up next time. I had a feeling that we had ran out of time talking about microscopes. I hope it was helpful for somebody, for anybody. Macro Santa. That just sounds like a very small Santa. All right. Macro face fungus video coming up. How did I know that was Messy Laura that had said that? All right, guys. Ho, ho, ho. Oh, when is Christmas this year? Should I look that up? It's, no, I have to look it up. Is it on a Thursday by any chance? I mean a Tuesday? My calendar's gone missing. Here it is. It's on the 25th, isn't it? Oh, it's a Wednesday, which means Christmas Eve is, well, you know I'm doing it anyway. I don't do holidays, so yeah, it may just be you and me, but like you as in somebody else who doesn't do holidays. But I'm going to be here that day, okay? The 24th, pre-Christmas, I'll be here. I'll be wrapping presents, but oh, by the way, heads up, I'm going to be doing I've got some editing that I'm going to be doing this week. For a beginners series that's going to be coming out in just a short while. So if anybody wants to hang out with me while I do that, I'll do a live stream, possibly tomorrow or the next day. So just if you ring the bell on the thingamajig on the video, they'll let you know when I'm starting. I've got to go. I'm not allowed to go past 9 o'clock. I don't think I am. I mean, it's... I've got to read all of these messages. You know what? I'm going to sign off and read them. And if there are any questions in here, yes, December the 24th is the next time. Not the next time I'll be here, but I will be here on the 24th. So I'm going to look at these, and if there's anything that I didn't answer, then I'll get it answered next week. But anyway, I'll be back next week. You know what? Next week I might be doing it on location in Georgia, because I'm on my way up to Georgia, yeah, to do the Photoshop thing. So yeah, don't worry about it. I'll take care of all of that. I'll just see you next week, one way or the other. 8 o'clock, macro talk, 8 o'clock Central, every Tuesday, whether it's Christmas or not. And I will see you guys at the end of this week. If you're interested in hearing the conversation with Steve Axford, it's going to be fantastic. All right, guys, take care. Have a good evening. Stay out of trouble. And thank you again, Josh. I appreciate it. Good to have you on board. Take care, guys.